Hello everyone, bringing you the second video today looking at the British Army's 90 pattern PLC or personal load carrying equipment. This of course is the first issue version of that set, and in part one we had a look at the setup we have on the mannequin here, talking about the way the various components attach to the equipment, and obviously looking at the equipment setup on the mannequin gave the opportunity to look at that in some detail. In this video we're going to have a look at these components individually, have a look at the various features of the designs of each component, how they attach to the belt and so forth, how the yoke works, and we'll talk about that in some detail with the various components laid out, and that's what we're going to have a look at now. The first element of the personal load carrying equipment we're going to have a look at here is the waist belt. That's what everything else attaches onto, so it makes sense to have a look at this first. You can see the buckle here. This is actually a Nexus buckle. You can see how that functions at the front there. This has been fitted back to front and upside down, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't affect its function, and it's how the belt came to me, so I've just left it like that, but you can see Nexus on the back there. This section of the buckle attaches onto the belt with this thinner section of nylon webbing here, which has just been stitched on. You can see the stitching there. And this allows this section of the buckle to be adjusted in. So whilst the belt's worn, whilst the equipment's being worn, you can adjust in the waist, which is a useful feature. Just have a nylon belt loop there, keeping the excess of this in check. If we loosen this off again, the stamp is found on this side, as you can see. It's difficult to make out the date there, but the earlier examples of this have the stamp directly onto the nylon webbing. It's rather difficult to read because of the weave of the nylon, but that is the stamp. Later examples of these have a stitched in label, and this end of the belt is just finished off with a brass tip that's riveted in place, as you can see there. On the other end of the belt, the buckle is attached by the belt doubling back on itself, and then you have hooks which hook into little pockets on the back of the belt there, basically taken from 1937 pattern, this method of adjusting in the belt. And then you have a belt loop there, or a nylon webbing loop, just to hold the belt together at this end as well. Very simple really. And the whole of the back of the belt is, as you can see here, is constituted of these little pockets which are woven into the design, and these allow for C-hooks on the back of the various components to be clipped in place. Much as the weight is taken by belt loops, each component has a set of C-hooks which stops the pouch or whatever else sliding around on the belt, and we'll see that in just a minute. On the back of the belt here we have two attachment points. These are the only points of the belt which attach directly to the yoke, and these two rings here take the thinner straps on the back of the yoke, buckle through these to support the back of the belt. So that's the belt from the equipment. Pretty simple really, not that many fixtures and fittings, but a big plus from previous designs is the fact that once it is clipped in position, whilst you're wearing this, you can adjust in the belt, or indeed loosen it off if you're wearing extra layers of clothing or body armour. So that's a neat advance on previous designs. The next thing to have a look at here is the yoke, and this is a little difficult to look at in camera here perhaps, as it just looks like a mass of straps and buckles. If you're confused about how this works, I suggest going back to part one. It's possibly a little easier to see on the mannequin how this works and how it attaches onto the various components, but it's easier here to look at how the buckles and so forth function. So the two straps coming down the front here support the front of the ammunition pouches, and we'll see where they attach in just a minute. And you can see these buckles all operate very simply in that you pass the strap through the rear section of the buckle, back down through the front section, and then they lock with tension. So this loop, which would loop through the ring on the ammunition pouch at the front, is nice and tight, but if you pull down on this it will tighten it in further. So again, there's some adjustment there. Whilst you're wearing the equipment, you can adjust in these straps to properly support the load on the belt. Very, very simple, but it works very well. You can often see the ends of these then secured with tape, taped together to stop the loose end of the strap flapping around. Turning this over, we can have a look at the other straps and fittings on the back here. So these straps on the sides here loop round under the arm and attach onto the ammunition pouches, or indeed the utility pouches if they're being worn round on the front of the belt. And then they loop back on themselves in exactly the same way as we saw with the straps on the front of the yoke. So they help to take the load of the ammunition pouches or a utility pouch if worn on the front of the belt. These two thinner straps are the ones I mentioned when talking about the belt, and these two come down and loop through those rings on the back of the belt to support the belt directly. So those are just a smaller version of exactly the same design of buckle. They function in exactly the same manner. we have a look at the rest of the design of the yoke here, there are various loops and straps sewn on here, and these allow for a single pouch, a side pouch from the rucksack to be attached onto this without using the separate yoke, which allows you to carry two. So a single side pouch from the rucksack using special straps can be attached onto this yoke using these loops here. We'll have a look at that in part 3 of this series. I'm not going to talk about it more here because we've not looked at those components yet, and we will be looking at them in part 3. If we turn this over, we can have a look at the inside face of this, and as you can see, the nylon mesh which forms the window in the back of this, I suppose you could say, as you can see there, the mesh material actually runs underneath the nylon padded sections over the shoulder and down the sides here as well, which gives a little bit of extra padding and makes this a little bit more comfortable to wear. So that's the yoke for the equipment. Quite a good design given what had gone before, and it does support the equipment quite well, and it's relatively comfortable to wear. So not a bad design from that point of view. The next thing to have a look at here are a pair of ammunition pouches, and as we'll see in just a minute, these are handed. We'll have a look at the features on the front here first of all. You can see the fastenings for these are a quick release system. So you have a plastic loop attached on the front there, a plastic staple over which this section fits, and then the simplest way of doing this is to just slot this through here, and then you have a pull tab for easy opening. This is how you commonly see these used in the Gulf, but even in the Gulf and certainly later on, a common way which you do see of doing this, which is a bit different, which is more secure, is to take the tab, pass that through the loop, and then pull that down tight. And this is a lot more secure than using this method. So you can see, if I hold this up here, you can see the two different methods there on one pouch. This method is a lot more secure, and then simply by pulling this here, you can then open the pouch. When it's folded and empty, it doesn't work quite as it would do if the pouch were loaded, but that's the more secure method of using these fasteners. So-called Spanish fasteners, but they are essentially a plastic version of a quick release. You have here a blanking piece over this Velcro section at the front. Now that can be removed, and there is a section of Velcro on the flap there, as you can see. So you can have that extra method of securing this with a piece of Velcro there. Velcro not ideal, it does make quite a bit of noise, so there is a blanking piece there, which I tend to leave in place most of the time, and that obviously just stops the Velcro from hooking into itself when these are closed. If we look inside here, vinyl lining under the lid, as you can see, and then we have vinyl lining inside as well. If I get the light in there, you can see around there. And we do have drainage eyelets in the bottom of both pockets there, as you can see. Let's close this up again. Another feature to talk about while we're looking at the front are these little nylon loops. There's one sewn in at the middle here, one on this side and one on the other, and that's the same of the other pouch here as well. My understanding is, or certainly what I've seen these used for, is attaching a bungee cord around the pouches to hold them close to the body and give them a bit of extra support. That's something I've seen fairly commonly in photographs, but I've not found anything in the fitting instructions saying that's what these loops are for. So I'd be interested to know if that is indeed the official use for these. It makes sense, and it's certainly what was done, but I've not actually been able to find anything written down about what these little loops are for. And they do turn up on some of the other pouches as well, as we'll see if we have a look at some of the other components in more detail. If I flip these over here, you can see they are a handed pair. So we have the vertical strap with the ring on here. That takes the strap coming down from the front of the yoke, and then this angled one here takes the strap coming round under the arms from the back of the yoke to support these. And it's a very good method of support. It means they're very well supported and stabilised on the belt. These attach to the belt using belt loops, which you can see here, and the same on this one. And then they have a single C-hook in the middle, and this clips into the pockets on the back of the belt to stop these sliding around on the belt. So the weight of these on the belt is taken by the belt loops. This just stops them sliding around. That's the idea anyway. These lower, smaller loops are intended to take a strap or perhaps a bungee. I've seen examples of bungees used for this as well. Loop through these. There are other loops corresponding to this on the other pouches, and it means you can put a strap through all of these, or as I say, a bungee, and tighten them in and keep them nice and tight to the body when you're wearing the equipment. That's the idea of this little lower loop here as well. Just keeps the equipment that bit more stable when you're wearing it. It allows it all to be drawn in nice and tight to the body, stops it from flapping around. That's the idea. So you've got this lower loop for that. On the top of each pouch, as you can see here, we have that female buckle, which we'll talk about more in part 3 when we look at how you attach the yoke for carrying the side pockets from the rucksack on the back, or indeed carrying a single pouch from the rucksack on the back. We'll have a look at that in part 3, as I say. So that's the ammunition pouches. You'll notice when I open this one up that the interior didn't have the divider, which I'd mentioned in part 1. So I'll bring in another ammunition pouch here. This one is complete with the divider inside. You can see that there. Now these were commonly removed, but even with the divider in place, it is possible to fit, clattering around, possible to fit 3 magazines. These are the horrible RG magazines, which were initially issued for use with the SA-80, the L-85, so they aren't very high quality, these ones, but they are contemporaneous with this equipment. And if I get that in there, a little difficult to do looking through the camera, you can fit 3 magazines in there, as you can see, and it will then close tight over those. So that's an example with the divider still in place, and as you can see, you can fit 3 magazines in there. So there we are. That's a look at the ammunition pouches for this set of equipment. The next thing we'll look at here is the water bottle pouch, and you'll note this has the same closure and everything as we saw on the ammunition pouches. It's exactly the same, including the Velcro. We have a look in here. We have the 1958 pattern water bottle and cup, which fit very neatly in there. There's plenty of room to get those in, which is an advance on the preceding design, the 1958 pattern, where certainly the first issue water bottle pouch was a bit of a tight fit. So inside here you have ample room for the bottle and cup. You then have a pocket at the front which could take a filter bag, and if we look underneath the flap here, you've got a little pocket there in which you could put sterilisation tablets. So you can see the Velcro in the lid there, and again the vinyl lining material for this as well. So a good design, a good advance on previous designs in that it's a very easy fit for the water bottle carried in here. The fixtures and fittings on the back are a bit different, and again you can see a nice clear stamp on this, the manufacturer MWS and the 1989 date of manufacture there. On the side here we have the C-hooks again to stop this sliding around on the belt, hold it in position. You have the lower belt loop here for the strap or bungee, which I mentioned before, and then we actually have a belt loop, which means you can easily remove this from the belt because it closes with these 2 lift the dot fasteners here, as you can see. You've actually got a stiffening piece in there as well where it sits over the belt. So slightly different in the way it attaches onto the equipment, in that you have this detachable belt loop. If I can find the dot in there, there we go. But that is the water bottle pouch. And another feature to mention is it does have the nylon loops on each side, which we saw with the ammunition pouches as well. And again, it does have a drainage eyelet in the bottom there, as you can see. So that's the water bottle pouch from the equipment. The next thing we'll have a look at here is the utility pouch, and this is outwardly quite similar to the water bottle pouch from the front, as you can see. We have the same fixtures and fittings, the same closure and everything. Obviously the Velcro, the blanking piece here, this one's in pretty much unused condition, which is quite nice. Velcro under the flap there again. We do have that little pocket worked in again up here, which is interesting. And then you can see the stamping is actually inside on this one, and you have their pouch, utility, and then 89, the date there again, and the NATO stock number. Again, this vinyl lining material, as you can see in there, if we get the light in. And then again, we have a drainage eyelet on the bottom, as you can see, and the 2 little nylon loops, 1 on each side. Have a look at the back here. You can see this actually has 2 mounting points. It can be mounted high or low on the belt. As you can see, 2 sets of C-hooks for that reason as well. And then this lower loop here actually has a loop sewn into it. That small loop is actually sewn into the lower loop here, as you can see there, for attaching a bungee or a strap to help secure this around the body. At the top here we have 2 D-rings, and these basically fulfill the same role as the rings you saw on the top of the ammunition pouches. So this can be worn at the front of the equipment and have the yoke straps coming round, one under the arm and one vertically down at the front to support the pouch directly. And the back is really where you see how different this is from the water bottle pouch. The front, it looks very similar indeed, especially when the rings are folded out of the way. So that is the utility pouch, and I'll just fasten this up before I take it out of shot. So there we are, the utility pouch. We'll have one more component to look at after this, but we have here the entrenching tool in its carrier, within a carrier. So if we open this up here, we can remove the rubber carrier from the outer cover. This again attaches onto the belt in a rather different manner. It has these little straps here with buckles, which means of course it's easy to remove, but it's a slightly odd way of doing things. So you would literally clip these around the belt, and that would attach this to the belt. And obviously you then have this Y arrangement at the top here, this V arrangement with a strap and buckle, and obviously an adjustment here, so you can fit the rubber cover inside this and then tighten that down to hold it in place. There is a drainage eyelet towards the bottom there, as you can see. On the back here we have the designation of this. This is a 1990 date example, but we have carrier entrenching tool case. So it's a carrier for the entrenching tool case, interestingly. You are supposed to carry the entrenching tool within the rubber case within this. So the rubber case is a direct copy of the US Alice equipment, as you can see. It even has the slots on the back to take the Alice clips moulded in. If we open this up, see this particular example interestingly has a US stock code there with 00 being the national code for the US, but we do have a broad arrow and the date of 91 down here. If we remove the entrenching tool, this is the standard three-way folding shovel, and obviously you just then screw this up here to secure it in position. I'm not going to faff around with that right now. You can see the stock number up on the top of the blade here, and then if we look at the handle here, you've got the JG, which I believe is the manufacturer, and then around on this side, I'll flip it over again, sorry. Oh, we have 1994, the date of manufacture with a broad arrow there. So not quite as early as the other components. It would be nice to have an earlier dated example of this, but it is what it is, and it folds down like that, so that's what you end up carrying. You have the cover for the case, and then inside that you carry the three-way folding shovel. The final thing to have a look at here is the bayonet in its scabbard, carried in an outer nylon sheath. Just remove the bayonet here and put that up there out of the way. You can see how this system operates. You have a buckle here on a short nylon webbing strap at the top there, which secures the sheath inside, or the scabbard inside the sheath rather. So you've got this hard plastic scabbard for the bayonet. This is the other services example, which doesn't have the various extra fixtures and fittings. Just by way of illustration, this is the infantry version, which has a wire cutter on the end, point for sharpening the blade, and you also have a folding saw in here as well, which I'll see if I can show you. There you go. Not the main point of this video, just for point of illustration there. This outer nylon sheath will take either version of the scabbard for the bayonet. Again, it's got this vinyl lining material, as you can see there, plain green. On the back again we have two fixing points. You can have a higher fixing point here, or well, I guess you can wear it higher on the belt using this belt loop here, or lower on the belt using this one here. And as you can see, we have C hooks at both positions to secure this in position on the belt. And again, this is quite nicely marked. Let's have a look here, this way around. You see 89 there again, the date of manufacture, and the various details there stamped directly onto the nylon. So that's the outer sheath, the scabbard, which obviously takes the bayonet for the L85. So I hope that was an interesting follow-up to part one, obviously looking at these components in more detail. As mentioned, this is the first issue version of this set of equipment. I do plan to make videos going forward looking at the second issue version of this, which was still finished in green, and then the DPM version, which was introduced around the mid-1990s. So if you'd like to see those videos going forward, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the notification button down below. That will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you would like to support the channel, you can. Both Patreon and PayPal are linked down below, and as ever, a massive thank you to everybody who supports the channel using those two methods. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you all very much indeed. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below. And if you'd like to get in touch but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address down there as well. That's everything for this video. So until next time, bye for now.